Dropping cards over here, Pisces. I'm going to set that to the side. Actually, interesting. It's going to be relevant to the I Ching hexagram that I've got for you guys. So I'm just going to set the Sun card over to the side. How fascinating that that's the card that I ended up dropping, isn't it? All right. Well, I'm hoping that this reading is finding you doing well, Pisces. We've got a lot of ground to cover with this hexagram today, so I'm not going to give too much of my personal interpretation because I think the oracle speaks for itself with this one. But we've got hexagram number 36 for you, which is in this book, Benebell Wen's I Ching the Oracle. That's her book. Is called Darkening of the Light. And hexagram number 36 is composed of fire, which is this trigram down here, and earth. Earth over fire. So we're going to get into why that's called Darkening of the Light. Think about the sun dipping below the horizon or just below the horizon before dawn. Okay, so let's get into this for sake of time. All right, so the oracle says, "It is a time of transitions, a changing of the guard. One will come to an end while another is ascending. Use the darkness to your advantage. Wait until the darkness has set in completely before you start the uprising. Use darkness to veil your light. Begin the resistance of light under the veil of darkness. Do not compel the change. Let the time of transition take place in due course. Do not draw attention to your light, but do not let that inner light go out. A push for change is in the air, but the time for change has not yet come. For the one in hardship, take heart." I feel like that's you, Pisces. You've been in hardship for a long time with that Saturn right there. "Divine forces are in play. Soon your light will shine in the open day." Okay, so it says, tending toward darkness, dusk, the transitional period as night descends upon day, a darkening of the light. The sun has gone below, down to the center of the earth. The bright is wounded by darker forces, brightness being tarnished. The sage serves the many with unselfish concern for the multitude and the myriad things. Tend to the soldiers, the farmers, the tradesmen, the scholars, and the officials. Use the dark to veil your light, and under that veil secretly begin to sway the soldiers, the farmers, the tradesmen, the scholars, and the officials to support your position. Interesting. So it's kind of like calling all the commoners into order to sort of overthrow the tyrant or overthrow the authority, maybe. It's kind of an interesting little message there. Build a resistance of light, fire, against the dark, earth. Because if we think of fire as being like the source of light, the source of clarity, the source of consciousness, awareness, action, activity, movement, and then the earth as being like the absolute manifestation of yin, like total stillness, total receptivity. Everything kind of settles and descends and lands wherever it will. It's energy in a state of stillness rather than activity. And fire is sort of representing this alchemical process which incites the yin into movement again, into rising up rather than descending. So just kind of keep that in mind as we keep going through this hexagram. Okay, one is coming to an end, another is ascending, a time of transitions. There are both advantages to be gained and great hardships to surmount. And I'm seeing that as kind of like a way of showing the exchange, because fire has a tendency to rise up and earth settles. So there's kind of like an exchange that's being intimated by this hexagram, like they're about to swap places. Hopefully that makes sense. There are both advantages to be gained and great hardships to surmount. Do not cause the change to take place too quickly. Do not force a change. Do not compel a transition. The sage must seek out strength in numbers and accumulate support. The transition time, the darkening of the light, will bring adversity. Adversity is inevitable in such circumstances. When faced with adversity, you have no choice but to persevere. Maintain your inner light and keep it guarded. If you must, conceal it in the darkness until it is safe again. Do not draw attention to your light, but do not let that inner light extinguish. A push for change is in the air, but the time for change has not yet come. An auspicious omen for one who is currently experiencing great hardships. Okay, so a little context that Benebell provides here. Ming is the pictograph of the rising sun and the setting moon, the image of dawn. In short, the word means light, brilliance, and brightness. There is a clarity and transparent nature to this light. Ming also means vision or sight, to see with acuity and clarity. It's a figurative reference to intellect, sense, and wisdom. Ming means to understand, to know, and to be self-evident. The darkening of the light can portend entering into a dark night of the soul. It's about undeserved challenges, but how you confront injustice will determine how bright your light shines when the sun finally rises. Every time you see the word light or darkening of the light, consider the many facets of what light means in the context of hexagram 36. Okay. So she kind of gives a little analogy next, kind of talking about the uprising of the people against a tyrant. I'm not going to read too much of that because we have 3 changing lines today for you. We have line number 3, line number 5, and line number 6. So I'm going to be reading the line-by-line little associations with those 3 lines, the 3, 5, and the 6 for you. So I'm not going to get too much into further reading on that, but maybe just kind of keep that idea in mind, the sense of like the commoners uprising against a tyrant, an unjust authority. Okay, so 3rd line. A darkening of the light, an imperial expedition in the south, capturing their chieftain. Proceeding when there is disease and malady is ill-advised. Be mindful of your own health and well-being at this time. If you are not in full operational order, do not proceed with the endeavor you're contemplating. Focus on self-recovery and healing first. Pursuing your ambition will be productive, but long-term costs are great if you proceed right now when you are not yet at your best. Being patient and waiting to strike at another time, excuse me. When you are finally at your best, will yield the same success, but without the long-term cost. Do not be hasty. Da Shao literally means big head, though it generally refers to a chieftain, the one who leads. Da Shao can also be a reference to an okubi per Japanese folklore. Please pardon the pronunciation. Which means the sighting of a sky spirit in the form of a giant head, male or female. Okubi are interpreted as omens of a natural disaster to come. The trigram fire represents the south direction. Here the 3rd line is at the tip of the fire, right below the earth trigram. The imperial expedition also implies that it's a hunt. The objective of the hunt, in the south is to preserve the light of the fire and capture the last rays of the sun before it sets. Likewise, your objective now is to reclaim the light, and you know that to do so may require confrontation, conflict, even deception. The 3rd line of hexagram 36 references a ruse that was conceived to lure the imperial court of the Shang dynasty south. The Shang king was deceived into believing that the expedition south was a hunting trip. There, at the Battle of Muye, the Shang were ambushed and defeated by the son of King Wen, thus clearing a path for the Zhao ascent to power. Here, dusk symbolizes a transitioning period, or the transition from the Shang rule to the Zhao, a time of upheavals and transformation. That is where you are now. Okay, so we got the 5th line next. Obviously, do your own research onto this hexagram. Go ahead and read the line-by-line associations because it's going to offer you a lot more clarity than I'm going to get to with this, because I want to get to our tarot portion of this reading. But the 5th line says, Jizi conceals light within the dark, an auspicious omen for future prosperity. You want to openly and vocally state your stance. You want to object. At this time, feign conformity. Oh, that's interesting. It reminds me of something that my grandpa always used to say. It was like, try to blend in. Even if you don't agree with what's happening, don't readily give the outward expression that you're against what's going on, because you're going to be the first person that everybody points to when the call to find the dissenters is made. So you kind of want to blend into the background. Don't make yourself stand out as a rebel, so to speak. It is safer. A time will come for you to rise and stand up, and when you do, you will be a formidable force to contend with. Right now, you are weak. It is wiser to conceal your light within the dark, quietly rally the support you need, and speak out when your words will have the most impact. Timing matters, and right now the timing isn't right. Jizi, one of the wisest ministers in the court of Shang, witnesses the corruption and debauchery of the last king of Shang. As the Shang dynasty descends into darkness, the good and wise Jizi endeavors to be the light that overcomes the darkness, but to no avail. Threatened by the Shang king if he does not comply, Jizi feigns insanity rather than give in to the corruption and debauchery of the Shang. By feigning insanity, he conceals his light within the dark. Jizi goes on to be the mythical founder of a prosperous kingdom in the east. Like Jizi, you find yourself in a perilous situation where the mainstream majority around you and the leadership are headed down a dark path. They have been led astray by malevolent forces. If you openly refuse to comply, you will face serious repercussions and threats. If you comply, your principles will be compromised. Like Jizi, find a clever way to not participate that will not offend those in power and also not compel you into compliance. The long-term result of the matter you've inquired about is great prosperity. All right, and the 6th line. No light within the darkness. First ascent to heaven, then diffuse across the earth. The darkness referenced in the 6th line is a metaphor for what is in obscurity and the unknown. It is also a reference to the dark moon, the last day of the lunar month before the new moon. Might be relevant for timing purposes, maybe. Like the sky on the eve of the dark moon, there is no visible light, and yet light is promised once the next lunar phase begins. Right now, as I'm recording this, we're approaching the last quarter moon. I think we're on like the 5th or 6th lunar day of the waning cycle. And I'm using the Vedic calendar. I think the Chinese calendar, we're on like the 19th day of this 9th lunar month. Thus, the omen of new beginnings, the end of a darkening reign, and the start of a new cycle. This is the observance of a setting sun and the promise of rising light tomorrow. Here, the oracle does not provide any prognostication of good fortune or bad. Rather, the sentiment of the line is of neutral observation. However, with regard to inquiries about academic achievement or an examination, since Deng in antiquity signified success on the imperial civil service examination, the presence of that word here is an omen of scholarly success. I think it's a little funny. I wonder if it's actually pronounced Deng, because that's what it looks like. D, long E, N, G. Long E just kind of providing the sense of tonality of the vowel. But if it's like dang, it's like dang. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Okay. So yeah, that image of the new moon is interesting. It's like starting a new cycle, like reconvening by, like maybe the concealing in the darkness. It's like the moon, how it passes over the sun, or it passes near the sun. We can't see it from the earth at that point in time, but eventually it does, kind of come around as a crescent, and it grows in light before, finally culminating as a full moon. So there may be something about that process. You're more in the stage of like reconvening with the sun, hiding in darkness, hiding out of sight. One other thing I want to mention before we move into the tarot portion is that because of these 3 changing lines, the hexagram that you end up with, which I also invite you to read about, I'm not going to do it right now, but you'll end up with a transformed hexagram composed of wind over thunder, because this yang line will become a yin line, and these 2 yin lines will become yang lines. And that creates hexagram number 42, I believe, which is the hexagram of increase, of expansion, burgeoning. This is the one hexagram that I've drawn an image for so far, and I've posted about it. You've probably already seen this, but we have the wind over thunder. So definitely read about that hexagram as well, because it's kind of illustrating where the situation for you is transitioning into. Because you have a lot of transforming lines with your hexagram today, there's a lot of this intimation of flux, of change, of transforming is very much at the fore. Especially with this new moon imagery, they have the sun, the setting sun, the rising sun, passing into a state of darkness, passing through the period of nighttime, the period of more receptive, quiet, reserved, withdrawn energy, awaiting the time for the sun to, come forth again, for the rays of light to shine down into the darkness and awaken the common people, so to speak, or awaken the masses, awaken the world. maybe a more just form of leadership if we're going to go through that. Anyway, I'm going to shuffle these cards a little bit more just because I feel like we want a little bit more change, and I'm going to trust that they'll let me know when they're ready to be laid out on the table. But yeah, I love that the Sun card came out as the accidental first card. I'm going to actually put that right there at the crown of the reading. Okay, Pisces. I'm seeing the aurora as I'm shuffling your cards. I'm trying to figure out like what specifically about it, because I'm obviously seeing the colors and the kind of dancing light. To me, the aurora represents an exchange of celestial energy within the earth sphere. And of course, the aurora is a result of the sun expelling energy, and that energy interacting with the magnetic field of the earth, kind of representing like a coupling or like a charging event almost, for lack of better words for me to describe the process. It's kind of complicated, but also kind of simple. But I wonder if there's some sort of aspect of that exchange is relevant to your reading right now. Yeah, and I'm like, it's usually night. It's nighttime when you can see the aurora. I think these cards might be finished, or almost finished. Let's see. Still want more, maybe. I'm seeing turquoise, like the stone. Also the color. Kind of the color that I'm seeing with the aurora, this kind of ionization of the atmospheric layers. I do have a piece of labradorite in front of me, so that's probably part of why the association is being made, but I think something relevant about that, something to do with the sky energy, young heaven energy, celestial energy, solar energy, and it sort of trickling down under cover of night, like the aurora, like blessings coming in a time that feels difficult and dark, heavy, which is, I think, where most Pisces have been lately, in a heavy, dark place. Okay. Do y'all want to go again? I feel like there's a lot of need for changing around. Like, I feel like I'm seeing, like, shifting faces, like, the shifting cards, like, it's almost like there's so many different forms that can convey the message for you, Pisces, and it's very indecisive. Like, it feels like it's not sure how it wants to come through for you. It's very amorphous, kind of fluid, like the aurora. Again, I keep hearing that, like the aurora, like the aurora. Maybe that's going to be a relevant image throughout the course of this reading. I'm going to stop here. I just trust that what comes through is meant for you, Pisces. First card, we have art. This is Temperance in reverse. This is Sagittarius's card. And it also, to me, kind of conveys a sense of alchemy, a sense of interchange. I just can't get the aurora out of my head. This, almost like a marriage between the celestial sphere with the terrestrial sphere. And how, like, there's something being created where that energy is meeting, where the dark is interacting with the light. It's creating change or some new manifestation. We have the Three of Swords next. This is the middle decan of Libra. It's called Sorrow in this deck. Oh, and if I haven't already mentioned, I'm using the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck. For those of you that are curious, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. 10 of Coins. This is the last decan of Virgo. It's called Wealth in this deck. Oh, and I do want to mention, obviously we have the sun right there. That'll be like our third card, but it's going to be crowning this whole spread. Next, we have the Seven of Wands, which is the last decan of Leo. We have the Aeon, which is the World card, sort of encapsulating the ecliptic, the entire zodiac, the entire wheel. Two of Cups, first decan of Cancer. It's called Love in this deck. Six of Wands, middle decan of Leo. I think it's called Victory in this deck. Knight of Cups, so water sign. We have Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. Ace of Discs, that's the cardinal 0-degree point of Capricorn. The beginning of the Earth cycle. Beginning of the manifestation cycle. Bottom of the deck, we have Libra, Justice, or in this deck it's called Adjustment, in reverse, which I think is connecting with the notion of injustice that we were maybe talking about with the hexagram, kind of supplanting a tyrant. Okay, where to begin? Interesting. Okay, so I'm being compelled to look over at the sun right here and how the sun is being framed between the last decan of Virgo and the middle decan of Libra. And to me, it's kind of talking about that transition. You know, as we pass that cardinal 0-degree point of Libra, the sun is now beneath the equatorial plane and is continuing its southward journey to the southern solstice, which takes place in December. For those of us in the north, that's the winter solstice. But I think it's like relevant to this hexagram that was coming through because there's this period of moving into darkness. You know, the northern hemisphere, the days are increasingly shorter and the nights are increasingly longer. And it's like, maybe this isn't the time to act, kind of like what this hexagram was saying, because now is the time to build up your resources and to conserve your energy and to weather the winter, to weather this dark period of, this dark night of the soul, if you will. And it's being explained to me within the context of the annual cycle of the sun. Because, as above, so below, the heavens very much mirror and reflect the periods of time within our own lives, the rhythms of our thoughts, the rhythms of our actions and passions and desires and visions. Anyway. But yeah, so this is kind of what the imagery is talking to me about, because once you pass out of that last decan of Virgo, you're moving into Libra. You're moving into that autumnal equinox, that western equinox, when night is overcoming the darkness. The dark half of the year is now becoming longer than the light half of the year. And obviously the Three of Swords is called Sorrow. It's a Saturn-ruled decan of Libra. Saturn is still occupying your own sign, Pisces, in that middle decan of Pisces. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a few days. I think Saturn's like around 16, 17 degrees of Pisces right now. Could be wrong. But, there's that sense of heaviness, that sense of containment and limitation being imposed upon your natural ability to express yourself and that natural ability to feel assured and comfortable in yourself as a result of situations or circumstances that are kind of taking your power away in some form. I'm saying that as I'm saying that, I'm looking at the sun, concealing your light in some way. Like the moon card in the tarot is actually associated with the sign of Pisces and not necessarily with the celestial body of the moon itself. And so I'm being compelled to think back on what the hexagram was talking about, like the new moon portion of the cycle of that slipping into concealment, slipping out of view, and allowing the sun to shine in your place as the sole luminary. But inherent in that period of time is the promise of the continuation of the cycle. In time, the moon will become visible again and take its rightful place as the complementary luminary to the sun. The sun will shine in the day and the moon rules over the night, that kind of thing. So maybe in this period of moving into a longer, more prominent dark half of the year, you're slowly coming into embodiment of yourself as the complementary luminary. You're embodying the moon energy, the receptive, shining, feminine. And I'm looking over at Temperance as I'm saying that, and it's making me think of the form of Shiva that is the junction, the union of Shiva and Shakti in one body. I think it's called Ardhanarishvara, if I'm remembering that right. It's been a while. But this merging of the solar half with the lunar half within one form, and that being like the source of creation, the gate through which manifestation occurs. And maybe that's kind of what the aurora marriage of the heavens with the earth was kind of conveying to me. I don't know, working with these two dynamic and different expressions of energy, yang and yin, solar, lunar, however you want to see that binary, light and dark, day and night. That sort of imagery seems really, really relevant to this. Learning to shine within the darkness, but acknowledging that this is the time to recede into the darkness. Just like the new moon, it's disappearing, it's invisible. If we could see it, it's just like the shadowed black half of the moon. It's the dark nighttime portion of the moon that's facing us. I'm looking down at this Aeon card, the World card underneath the Temperance card. And for me, it's kind of, it's calling attention to the poles. Obviously the globe of the earth, depending on what hemisphere you're in, wherever we are in time, like wherever we are within the annual cycle around the sun, the light is going to interact with the polar regions differently. But fundamentally, there's a still point in the middle. The earth rotates and spins, but there's always like a central point, a central core that is fundamentally unchanged by this movement. It's kind of being conveyed to me through like the sense of the pole star and how it doesn't really move, at least perceivably to us. And it's relatively stationary even as the sky rotates around it. So it's like calling to mind this idea of maybe needing to embody a state of stillness within oneself, because there's a lot of I'm hearing like aggressive, there's a lot of dynamic, maybe dangerous isn't quite the right word, but that's the word that's coming through, circumstances around you that would maybe compel you to react rather than to respond to situations. Like maybe there's a lot of adversity, a lot of opposition, a lot of I'm looking at the Three of Swords as I'm saying this, a lot of sorrow, situations that are upsetting, but it's like reconvening within oneself, finding the strength within yourself to endure and to not really give the impression that these circumstances are overpowering you. Because in so doing that, it's going to allow you to remain through this process. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of the litany against fear from Dune. I mean, Dune comes through so much because it's just fabulous, but sorry for those of you that are getting annoyed with me bringing it up so much. But this idea of like, fear is the mind killer, fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear, I will allow it to pass over me and through me, and when the fear is gone, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing, only I will remain. So it's like kind of like this process of being aware of the feelings and the sensations and the experiences, but not identifying with them, because what you are and who you are is so far beyond what those phenomenal experiences are. And by anchoring yourself in that, the outer tumult doesn't affect you. Because as it changes, as it moves into a different manifestation, as it will, it's a guarantee of life. Change is a fact of manifest reality. You will still be there to watch it unfold, untarnished. Because as I was saying that, I was seeing like a piece of silver and a piece of gold, and like watching the celestials like revolve, like Saturn and Jupiter going around. Like I'm seeing like centuries upon centuries turning in the blink of an eye. But it's like the gold and the silver are not tarnishing. Like, silver typically turns like a blackish, grayish kind of, when it starts to oxidize and through the passage of time, it kind of tarnishes like that. And gold remains perfect, but it's like, it's showing to me that what you are endures even in this process of unfolding time. Like, you won't be tarnished, even when these circumstances seem like they're going to destroy you or overpower you. You have the Six of Wands right here. It is in reverse, but I'm seeing it under the Sun card as like, for whatever reason, I'm getting like this impression that it's like they're mirrored. Like there's a mirror between them. And I just keep wanting to like fold the Six of Wands up, because then it becomes upright and it becomes victory. It becomes you rising above your circumstances, self-empowered and connected and able to express how you feel, what you believe, who you are. Like you're looking in the water. Interesting, because I would typically get that impression with like the Queen of Cups, but you have the Knight of Cups here, which is still like connecting with a visionary, emotional, intuitive reality. But it's like with this Six of Wands and this Sun card right here, when you think of the Queen of Wands, you typically get like an image of a queen, gazing into this sealed vessel and like connecting with the images and visions that she's having in contemplating this object, kind of like a crystal ball sort of thing. And I'm connecting with this Knight of Cups as being like an earlier manifestation of that, of learning how to do that. Rather than being caught up and identifying with the images that are being seen within this vessel, within this cup, within this crystal ball, whatever it is, it's like you're connecting with the observer. You're disconnecting from the observable phenomena, and instead connecting with the observer itself. The sun, this central consciousness around which the entire manifest universe is made apparent. It's the light that shines and gives the material universe its form. Because without the light, there is no form. Without awareness, there is no form. Without consciousness, there is no universe. Kind of like that whole, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound, that sort of thing. Let's see. Seven of Wands. It's interesting that we have these two Leo solar ruled decans, because Leo is the sign of the sun. Leo is the domicile of the sun. Obviously, you have the Seven of Wands, which is ruled by Mars, and then you have the Six of Wands, which is ruled by, oh my gosh, what comes before Mars? I think by the sun, right? Or by Saturn, sorry. Let's see, what is it? Jupiter. None of the above. But Leo is coming through, and Leo is kind of like the I don't want to say perfected expression of the individual, but I think that's probably the best way to put it. Someone who is self-assured, who is in tune with their sovereignty, who imparts their authority into everything that they do, their mastery into everything that they do. It's sort of like the crystallized perfection of what consciousness is within the manifest world. It's the king, the sage, maybe more so the king. But it's interesting to me that these victory and valor have come through being and kind of interacting with this 10 of coins energy too, because it's like in connecting with the supreme self, with the enduring self, the self that remains, like I was saying, you come into contact with true wealth, true abundance, because your inner self is sort of like the wellspring through which prosperity flows. True wealth is not having a bunch of things and money and stashes of goods and grains and whatever, cows, however we define what wealth is not actually what wealth is. True wealth comes from within. It comes from being in communion with the inner sun. When you are the source of your own light and you're not trying to shine by the light of someone else, you're made aware of the infinite source of free energy within. You're like the heart of the Taurus field is what I mean, like the electromagnetic field that's sort of folding and imploding upon itself, and it's sort of like it kind of bursts out through the head and comes back up through the feet, and it's just this continuous cycle of energy that kind of grows and expands upon itself throughout the process, and it just continues to spiral and unfold with greater complexity, greater velocity, greater density. Like in time, it only gets stronger. And physically, we see the process of decay unfold within our bodies, but fundamentally it's like an alchemical process of becoming more subtle, and this is kind of conveyed in the idea of the hair turning white and gray in our elders, because they're moving away from the earth and into a more subtle form. The energy has refined itself away from gross physical earthy energy, this 10 of coins, and into something without form, without body, pure energy. And I'm looking at the rays flowing out from the sun as I'm saying that. These are all like really abstract and complex images that I'm connecting with, so I'm hoping that things can kind of make sense to you in your own interpretation of what I'm saying. This Ace of Discs, I feel like this process that's unfolding, this process of self-realization, of connecting with the enduring self in the midst of adversity, finding the heart where the light and the dark meet within oneself, the Shiva Shakti form, this Temperance card, and communing with the inner sun. I feel like it's leading to this Ace of Coins, and the Ace of Coins is kind of like the ingress point of the earth cycle of manifestation, of manifesting will and desire into the world. It's that first 0 degree point of Capricorn. It's the foundation, the lowest point of the zodiac, the lowest, like literally in declination from the equatorial plane. It's the sun's most southerly extreme in its annual apparent motion, and that's the southern solstice, December, like I was saying, but it sort of represents like the first brick laid in the construct. So like in communing with the self, in finding the true self within and learning how to not be so shaken up by however life chooses to manifest itself around you by finding the point of harmony and balance and equality within. I'm looking at this Justice card as I'm saying that, balancing the scales, or rather coming to find that you are not on the scales, like constantly fluctuating between happy and sad or tired and energetic. You're something beyond that. You're watching and observing the process. You're the judge behind the scales. You're able to more effectively create a reality that's in alignment with where you're moving. Hopefully that makes sense. It's like once you reach the foundation, the pole, again, this polar idea, the southern pole, southern solstice, most southern extreme of the sun's apparent motion is this Ace of Discs, and kind of what I was talking about with this polar imagery, this stable point around which everything is revolving and changing and shifting, but is itself remaining stationary. It's like that is where potential blossoms. That is where activity issues forth from. And for whatever reason, I'm looking at the transparent figure's face, and I'm like thinking, like a child. I keep hearing like a child, like entering into a new cycle with the mindset of a newborn. I'm surprised the Fool card didn't come out, but I feel like it doesn't really need to in this instance. Like that's where the energy is compelling us towards. Becoming like the child and trusting that the universe will provide for you because you are in communion with the source of all abundance. In communing with the divine, you're provided the nourishment that you need to endure. I think kind of what was coming through in the previous reading for Aquarius is like this idea of connecting to source, and it's not necessarily our conventional idea of what the source is. Like it's not something that we're going to find in the physical world and its myriad constructions. It's not in the matrix. There's a source that remains even when you've unplugged from the matrix. There's a different order of things than what we've constructed for ourselves. A more subtle reality, a more subtle truth, and once you connect with that, you have access to infinite energy, infinite potential, infinite ideas, infinite expression within the polarity of manifest reality. Because everything does exist within a binary of yin and yang, of light and dark, of moving, dynamic, and stationary still. And the truth is in both as one. It's a paradox. The Tao, the source, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is a paradox. Because it is all things and no things simultaneously. Yeah, and as I said that, my eyes drifted right down to this Two of Cups here, which is called love, and obviously can on a more mundane level represent like actually relating with somebody in a more romantic or harmonious way. But I think more fundamentally, this is kind of what's being talked about, is like this exchange of Shiva and Shakti, of the sun and the moon, this marriage, whether it's taking place within yourself or being expressed within the context of a relationship with others, I feel like isn't really important. What's important is the truth that's being expressed within the dance, within the play of images. You're learning not to identify so much with the play of images, with the images that are projected on the screen. You are the projector. Or maybe, even more fundamentally, you are that which the projector is plugged into. you are the source of the energy that passes into the projector through the plug. The plug being like your physical body, maybe. I don't know. We'll get rabbit holes. Don't need to get into that. Yeah, one other thing I want to mention before we close out is I'm thinking of like a centrifuge as I'm looking at the sun card. I'm like specifically focusing on the central point. Like everything is kind of pushed to the outer edges through the process of being spun, but the center is unmoving. Like, I mean, it turns maybe, but fundamentally its perspective remains unchanged. Its position remains unchanged in the midst of the movements. And maybe that's kind of what was being shown to me through this gold and silver, these gold and silver rods that I was seeing with the celestials spinning around them, and in the process of the unfolding of time, it's like they're remaining unchanged, unscathed, untarnished, and unmoved. Like these are the poles, the upward, the ascending, the yang, and the descending receptive yin, the sun and the moon, you know, these polarities united within one polar body. Something about that is really important in the message that's coming through. As I'm saying that, I'm looking at this central wand and the Seven of Wands. Again, it's like polar energy. Like there's something about the poles, north and south, inward and outer, the center, the core, the heart, the sun. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for now, Pisces, and see what comes through in the next reading. But I hope that what came through is helpful to you in some way, or helps you to maybe come to a new understanding of what you're experiencing. You know, the tarot is invaluable as a mirror for what we already are and what we already are experiencing, but it provides a different view, a different perspective on things. I think that's why most of us turn to it, because it's very helpful in bypassing our biases a lot of times. Same with the I Ching, so both great things. Like I said, read more on the hexagram that came through for you, and also on the transforming hexagram, because both are going to offer you some insight. Your transformed hexagram is going to offer you insight into where the situation is moving towards, and what it's becoming. Because I think, especially with all the changing lines you've got, you know, the energy is very much in a state of flux, very much change, you know, that turning, shifting images on the screen, spinning celestials, like all of that is kind of what's being conveyed to me in the process of connecting with your energy right now. And Saturn is like compelling you to find your anchor in the place that doesn't change. Find your pole, your center. Okay? Wishing you the best, Pisces. I hope you're well. Take care.